You know, I don't want to keep talking about AI. I mean, I really don't. I was just looking at the numbers, and about 1 in 5 of my last 10 videos have been AI, and I had one topic on the back burner that's been sitting there for a long time that I will talk about eventually. You know, it's not really time sensitive or anything. Unless some big change happens, then I'd be ready to come back and revisit. And then I was thinking about maybe talking about the AI thumbnail situation with Mr. Beast. That got pulled, thankfully, very nicely. And I think I'm just going to show this for a second. This website that I just pulled up, okay? I just pulled up some random website to show a news article for it because, you know, it's not super important. This is on the United News of Bangladesh. Anyways, I don't really like talking about it, but there just keeps being something to talk about it. So I'm going to do it anyways because I like talking in general. I don't like how much I talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it. So this one will be a little bit of a short one. So as I mentioned a couple years ago with the Mario Kart video on how Nintendo is just constantly hating on its consumers, is how I used to play Smash. I used to play so much Smash. I grew up playing Brawl, and then I found a friend group who played a ton of Smash 4. We played loads of that game. And then whenever Ultimate came out, for the first couple years, like maybe the first 2 years of that game, I had thousands of hours in that game until eventually COVID happened, and then, you know, I couldn't play in person with my friends, and then, you know, I didn't go back to school again the year after that because, you know, I was still able to stay home from COVID, and then we all split up for college, and I just really never touched the game again. But it seems like the meta may have shifted a little bit. Lost to a 16-year-old today at my local tonight who asked ChatGPT for matchup advice after game 2. I can't keep up with these Zoomers. Now I'm going to give it to this kid. That is actually some crazy tech right there. If I'm going to be real, I'm not going to memorize the matchups for every match. I mean, maybe once you get to the point where you are, you know, playing competitively, some of the things that you do kind of need to know for characters are like the weight classes of all the characters and at what percentage your, you know, light or heavy attacks or whatever can kill certain weight classes of characters. You know, once you add on map advantage to a bunch of those, you know, I feel like, in my mind, I'm not going to learn the other characters where they get map advantages. I'm going to learn my main, and that's going to be all. This I applaud. I don't support, though, but that's the direction that, you know, technically we are supposed to be going whenever it comes to using technology to our advantage. Same way as when the internet came out, we stopped digging through books because that was a long time intensive process, and it did give us the result, and we did lose something by giving us the ability to get this information so much quicker. You know, we are doing it again, and technically this is kind of where we should be going, but all I can really do is just sit back and applaud this situation. Now, let's be real, the map ban is not what won this kid the match. It was his ability to play the game, but the map pick certainly helped. I don't really know what goes on in these tournaments. I had a bunch of friends who would go to them occasionally, but I was never one who went just because I didn't care that much. I just liked playing casually. But there's an argument that they're trying to make that this counts as mid-set coaching, and basically the way it works is, I'm sorry if you can hear the birds outside. They're being really freaking loud. In the middle of the game, you can't get coaching help. You play a couple rounds, usually it's like 2 out of 3, sometimes it's 3 out of 5 with another person, and then during that whole time, you can't get outside help. You can't have someone come and coach you. Now, you can be on your phone. You can be on your phone in between rounds. That normally is allowed. And so it wouldn't be that far-fetched if someone did a quick Google search on some matchup information or something. Asking ChatGPT feels like a little bit more because this can actually give you coaching advice. It didn't see the match. It didn't see the way that your opponent played, but functionally, if you don't have the time to feed it enough of how you played and how they played, just kind of dictating it to it, maybe it would be able to actually give you coaching advice. In my mind, though, maybe that concept sounds a little bit ridiculous. If this is considered coaching advice, a Google search would be considered coaching advice in my mind, and then they just shouldn't allow phones in general. Which, to be fair, I feel like it's the way that it should be. You know, it is what it is, though. I don't really care too much. I'm not ingrained in the Smash community anymore. I don't watch tournaments. I don't watch people play the game anymore. I'm on the back burners. I love playing the game myself. If I get an opportunity, I will. But let's take a look at the ChatGPT prompts for a second, because these beautiful guys here actually gave us the prompts so that we could take a look at them. I have 3 stage bans in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I'm Corrin versus Robin. What stages do I ban? And then it just gives them, ban these 3 stages: Smashville, Kalos, Pokemon League, and Town and City. Now, thankfully, I actually miraculously somehow do have information to weigh in on specifically the stages to ban in a Corrin versus Robin situation. I don't play them. I haven't played them. In fact, I never mained either of them. I had a little bit of fun of Robin, but that was it. But luckily, I actually do have two friends who mained Corrin and Robin for a long time, and I still see them, you know, match up occasionally using those characters. And when they do, I know their bans immediately every single time. The Corrin, for example, immediate ban is Unova, Pokemon Stadium 2, and Smashville every single time. Don't ask me why those are the answers, okay? He's just said that those are the best bans for the characters. Now, of course, it also always depends on how well you play, but, you know, I've asked him, and he's like, this is the general community consensus from as far as he's seen. So that's what I'm gonna go on. Unova, Pokemon Stadium 2, and Smashville. Which, to the AI's credit, it did land Smashville. I'm curious, actually. I'm curious if I were to ask ChatGPT right now, too, because it looks like he didn't tell it to search the web. Because I believe if he had told it to search the web, we would see a little search the web icon down here. Let me do it myself and see what answer we get. Okay, interestingly, it gave me a completely different set of stuff. Now, to its credence, reading through actually its reasons as to why it does want to do these bans, they are completely reasonable. Corrin is very big with juggling and platforms, and Robin does need a whole lot of horizontal space so that it can zone with projectiles. And generally banning with those guidelines would perform good enough. I'm not going to say that this is any like expert advice from ChatGPT here, but it's definitely like something relevant. I'm curious to know what their bans for the first round were in comparison to the second round, if they were banning to disrupt projectiles and, you know, keep open platforms for Corrin, or if they just kind of like ran it and then just saw what happened later. Maybe they didn't have any good bans at all. Maybe this was their first actual experience in understanding when and what to ban. But generally, these aren't that bad of bans. You can still do better, but they're not that bad. Anyways, that's it. I just think it's funny that we're pulling this out mid-match now. Imagine later on, like in some first-person shooter game, one of those big competitions, they just start asking ChatGPT for coaching advice in the middle of the game. I mean, like, surely in one of those situations, you'd be able to have like the ChatGPT just kind of like off to the side, you know, like you're holding down a point, right? You know, you do need to be able to snap back and immediately start shooting, but maybe you have someone up in front of you and behind you covering the point, and they just have you say like, hey, ask ChatGPT for the advice real quick. Surely that wouldn't be allowed, but it'd be real funny if it came out that someone was doing that and getting away with it. But that's about all I have to say. Bye-bye.